Hi everyone, this is Migs from 16ballph, and today we have a detailed review on the Jordan Zion 2 Hope Diamond. Before we get started, if you do like the video, please make sure to leave a thumbs up down below. Then if you have any comments, questions, or any suggestions for future videos, please feel free to leave them in the comment section down below as well. Then I'll also be leaving a link to the SNBPH Facebook group down below, so I do hope you can join us over there because that is a place where we talk about sneakers and basketball quite a bit. And it's also where we have the SNBPH Steel Cabinet, where I, as well as a lot of our other members, take some shoes that we no longer use, or some shoes that I've personally reviewed in the past, and put them up for bidding at way below market value. Then if you haven't already, please do make sure to sub to the channel, because it really does help us out quite a lot. Then with that being said, we do finally have the Jordan Zion 2. We have actually been seeing the Jordan Zion 2 for quite some time now. I mean, we were seeing leaked images of these quite a while back, and even a couple of months ago we already saw Zion wearing these in that video that went viral of him doing a casual windmill dunk. Of course, for us in the sneaker community, the thing that stood out the most in that video were definitely his shoes, because it pretty much confirmed the early leaks that we got of the shoe, and a lot of people, even from that very short video, had some very strong opinions on how these look. I mean, there's really no getting around the fact that this Zion 2 looks nothing like the Jordan Zion 1. The Jordan Zion 1 that released last year was definitely a shoe that looked pretty modern, but at the same time looked a little bit generic. But with this Jordan Zion 2, they took a very retro and very old school approach, because this shoe definitely resembles a lot of early 2000s basketball shoes. A good thing about the shoe though is that even though the styling looks very early 2000s, it is a pretty lightweight shoe considering how bulky it looks. And I'm definitely excited to play in these because I just have a gut feeling that these will outperform the Zion 1. Aside from hoping that this will outperform last year's shoe, I also hope Zion is able to play in these because we really didn't get to see him at all last year except in street loads on the bench. But now it does seem like the injury is behind him and he's all ready to go for this season. So I guess we'll just have to keep our fingers crossed that we see him on court rocking the Zion 2s. And like I said a while ago, I do think the Zion 2 has a very good chance of performing better than last year's shoe. But to check out why, let's take a look at the tech specs. Starting off with the traction, you do have a solid rubber outsole with a modified herringbone traction pattern all throughout, except for here in the middle of the forefoot where you have your Zion logo. That Zion logo is definitely pretty large, however it is composed of rubber and the lines are pretty aggressive, so I do think that portion will end up gripping just as well as the other parts of the outsole. I did try these out briefly here on my wood floors at home, and the outsole did grip pretty well, however I do think it might have an issue on stopping on forward and backward movements. The spaces in between the grooves on the outsole are also pretty tight, so even just using these here at home, it was kinda collecting some dust, so that's definitely something that I will be closely observing when I take these out on court. Then for the durability of the outsole, the rubber grooves are a bit on the thin side and the traction is overall pretty shallow. However, this shoe, at least in the Asia release, comes with an XDR outsole. Then one last thing about the durability of the outsole is that there is a break here at the midfoot, and it does expose a little bit of that foam from the midsole, which is normally fine and not a big issue. But in the Jordan Zion 2, since it is super flat, that foam actually has a chance of like touching the floor and will really start to show some wear and tear after some time. Then moving out to the cushion, the Zion 2 does have a pretty interesting mix of tech because you do have a full-length injected file on midsole with an air strobel unit here at the heel and a top-loaded zoom unit here at the forefoot. From the press release on the Zion 2 by Jordan Brand, they did explain that they put that air strobel in the heel for maximum impact protection, and they put that top-loaded zoom unit for explosiveness and responsiveness. They also explained that they put this rubber cup sole for containment and for stability, and from just trying out the shoe here at home, just jumping around and moving around, I think they were definitely able to achieve all three of those things. That air strobel unit here at the heel is very reminiscent of the PG4 and the PG5, in that it is really plush feeling and really soft, and has tons of impact protection for those heavy heel strikes. Then in the forefoot, you do have that top-loaded zoom unit, and though it is just your normal size zoom unit and not like unlocked zoom or a zoom strobel, it still definitely gives you that zoom sensation with that bounciness, responsiveness, and explosiveness. Then for the cup sole here at the midfoot and the forefoot, I was initially afraid that this would make the forefoot feel very stiff and very brick-like, but the rubber that they used on the cup sole is actually pretty thin and pretty malleable, so it didn't really stiffen up that forefoot cushion, but instead just made it a little bit more stable and supportive. Then lastly, for the injected Phylon, it actually is pretty soft, and you can kind of feel that right away just by pressing on it here at the heel. Then moving on to the materials, the Zion 2 does try to give you that sort of old school flavor, but unfortunately, even though the materials look old school, the quality is pretty cheap as you would expect from a budget shoe in 2022. For the midfoot of the shoe and the forefoot strap, you do have this synthetic nubuck, and though it does feel adequately soft, you can definitely see that it is synthetic, and the cut of the material is also a little bit on the thin side. Then moving on to the heel of the shoe as well as the ankle collar, this is basically just fully synthetic, and it does feel pretty rubbery or plasticky, and I definitely think it was an interesting choice. I mean, it does help with the pattern, and I think it was easier to print on this. But overall, it just doesn't feel nice in hand, and it also doesn't look good up close. So I just wish they could have used more of this nubuck here at the back, or maybe could have even used a synthetic patent leather. Then moving on to the forefoot, you do have this open-celled mesh that is pretty comfy on foot and actually also moves well with your foot. And then here at the tip of the toe, you have some more of that nubuck, which is there to protect that mesh from toe drags. Then for the last few materials, you do have a nylon tongue with some more of those synthetics here at the top of the tongue. And then you do have these basic flat laces. And then you do have this nice and soft neoprene sock liner, which is very padded here at the heel, with very large ankle pillows as well. Then moving on to fit and sizing, I did go true to size with the Jordan Zion 2. And it fits me pretty well. The only issue I did have is here in the forefoot because it does feel a little bit tight, and I think it is mostly because of that forefoot strap because it is attached here at both sides of the forefoot. Thankfully though, the forefoot is made of this soft and breathable mesh, so I think over time once you break these in, it'll start to feel more comfortable around your toes. So for my recommendation on the sizing, if you do have a normal width foot or a narrow foot, go true to size. Then if you do have a wide foot, I think going up half a size would be your best bet because that tight fit here at the toes could definitely end up being a pinky toe killer if you don't get the size that gives you a little bit of wiggle room. Then moving on to the aesthetic details, like I did mention in the materials, there are a lot of layers to the shoe, but with this Hope Diamond colorway, I like how they use those layers because they didn't overdo it and gave it a pretty simple and cohesive look with a little bit of flair. So starting off with the outsole, that solid rubber is white all throughout, except for that Zion logo here at the forefoot, which is in bright pink. And here at the midfoot, you do see that injected Phylon peeking through, with that Hope Diamond pattern that actually goes all the way up to the midsole, up to the heel, and all the way to the ankle collar. That Hope Diamond pattern and color is definitely pretty loud and really stands out, which is actually really good because apart from this Hope Diamond pattern and color, the rest of the shoe is mostly white. When I did first get these in hand, this Hope Diamond piece that goes all the way from the midfoot to the ankle seemed quite familiar, but I really couldn't put my finger on what shoe it reminded me of. But just a couple of minutes before filming this review, I actually figured it out, and it was a shoe that I actually owned before, which is the CP3.2. It also had a similar concept with a pattern that went from the midsole all the way to the ankle. Although the design piece on those wasn't as wide as this, I still definitely think there's a strong resemblance. Then like I said, for the rest of the shoe, it is mostly all white, but you still do have a few hits of color, like this pink Zoom Air branding here at the tip of the strap, as well as this small pink Jumpman here at the medial side of the forefoot. You also do have blue nubuck here at the top of the tongue with a white Zion logo, and then rounding out the rest of the branding, you do have a white plastic Jumpman here at the heel, and a pink strip here at the heel as well, with your Air Strobel branding. Then for the last few aesthetic details, you do have ZW here at the lateral side of the forefoot, and then here at the midfoot, you do have NBLYYDY, which just means nobody built like you design yourself, which is actually just borrowed from a Jay-Z song. Then moving on to the overall aesthetics, these have definitely grown on me ever since the initial leaks, because I think at the start everyone was just kinda up in arms like what the hell is Jordan Brand thinking, but once we started getting more detailed pictures and once we saw it on Zion's feet, and now that I have these in hand, I can definitely say that it's nowhere near as bad as we all initially thought. It does have a very retro mid-2000s basketball shoe vibe. I mean, it does have a mid-cut, a lot of layers of materials, a forefoot strap, and a rubber cup sole. It definitely looks a lot more rugged and a lot more bulky than today's shoes, but the good news is that even though it looks pretty chunky, it actually doesn't feel very heavy in hand and on foot. I also really like how simple they kept this launch colorway because, as you know, most brands sort of put like a wild or crazy launch colorway to make a big splash. But I think this really works well with the shoe because it is pretty simple, but with that loud and very eye-catching pattern here at the heel and ankle. Then given that the shoe does have a retro vibe, and being that retro is still pretty in even until now, I do think that in addition to looking pretty good on court with these, you can go out and wear these casually with some shorts or some sweatpants. Then moving on to the price, the Jordan Zion 2 retails for 6,595 pesos here in the Philippines or $120 US. It does actually have the exact same price tag as the Zion 1, and for the materials on the shoe as well as that retro look and updated cushion, I definitely think it's a much better deal than the Jordan Zion 1. I was able to get my pair over at the Titan website, so you can definitely check them out on their site, their app, or their physical stores. Or you could also check out your local Nike stores, your Nike app, or your Nike website. As of the moment here in the Philippines, we do have the Hope Diamond colorway as well as the Voodoo colorway, but there is a $20 price difference between the two because the Voodoo colorway does come with like more premium materials and a special box as well. But for me personally, if you're just gonna hoop in them, then just definitely go with the Hope Diamond one because it is cheaper and it has more functional materials for on-court use. Then if you are in the US, the release date of the Voodoo was supposedly on June 22, and the release date for this Hope Diamond colorway is on June 30. So there you have it guys, that was my detailed review on the Jordan Zion 2 Hope Diamond. Once again, if you liked the video, please make sure to leave a thumbs up down below. Then if you haven't already yet, please do make sure to subscribe to the channel and click that bell icon for notifications. And as always, whether you're looking for that retail win or if you're 300 pounds and doing windmills like it's a piece of cake, just keep on hunting.